from a young age. My mother was always very into arts and crafts, and we would always go to her summer camp every summer and stuff. So I found myself wandering around in those next to the forest and whatnot, 'cause I'm from Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh. Obviously living in Florida, there's a lot of stuff that's influencing my work as far as the color palette and the shapes that I'm finding myself attracted to while I paint. But as far as the portraitures that I do and still the structural buildings, I would say definitely still come from my roots being in Pittsburgh and having such like an industrial city, also surrounded by all the forest up there, so. I found myself drawn to art because I feel like it was the only way I could actually get out and process the emotions that I was feeling inside my body. Growing up, my mother was very holistic as far as health goes and doctors and therapy and all of that type of stuff, you know? So art was kind of my form of therapy. And a lot of my paintings come from this fairy tale-like land where they look like something that's real but also imagined in the same way. So I feel that storytelling through that while also remaining attached to the real world drew me in quite a bit. My personal identity is the basis of all of my art, as for every artist I would say. However, mine is definitely centered in that, in whatever form, I guess, it takes place in. I would like to think that all my paintings are self-portraits, even if it's not necessarily a portrait. I'm forming from my past, my present, and my future self, I would say, as well as all the relationships around me that have influenced me, because I believe that all human beings are a genetic makeup of themselves, but also of everybody that they've touched or passed by or had a conversation with. So my personal identity is continuing to evolve and has evolved, and I don't think it will ever stop evolving, and painting and using that to my advantage works very well for me. As far as now being a contemporary painter and placing myself in the contemporary paint world of the 21st century, I find myself drawn to painters like Jenny Saville and Tracy Emin and Cicely Brown, Lucien Freud as well. I kind of love the idea of taking little pieces or learning little pieces from every artist and everyone that I surround myself with. The role that my art plays, I would say, as I said before, I do self-portraits, but at the same time, I like to think that it's myself looking at you, but it's also yourself staring back at you in the same way. So as you kind of are drawn to my portraits and my landscapes and my figures, I also want you to question the place that you have in them and the place that you have in our society, I guess, because as I'm placing myself and our society that's ever evolving, ever changing, however, I'm projecting it into a way that's inviting and welcoming, maybe not so dark or harsh, even though everything is a battle and whatnot. My battles on the canvas are your battles as well. They're just portrayed in a different way, in a different light, to allow you to see them in a different perspective. I want it to be a bit of a challenge, I guess, for the viewer, but also eye-opening in a way that's, you see something that you, or think of something that you haven't quite thought of before. My creative process lies or begins with meditation and writing and going back to distant memories that I have and using them to my advantage, I would say. Getting these sparks of ideas or shapes forming into these landscapes or people that I see in my head or that I've once met. Because every being that you see in your head or in your dream, I don't know if you know this, is somebody that you've seen in your life before. Your brain doesn't make up a face that it doesn't know. So using my distant memory, I will write it down in words or in shapes and figures and portraits that I've seen once and I'm connecting the dots from. So from there I'll begin and kind of allow the story or fantasy that's also reality to play out and take place through my paintings. When it comes to planning ideas versus being spontaneous, I would say a lot of my paintings begin with an initial plan in a way. However, the end result is something completely different than what I even imagined it to be in the beginning, because a lot of my practice is intuitive and everything finds a relation to one or the other thing. So even though I'm beginning with an initial plan, the initial plan is a lot like that distant memory that I have in my brain that's there as a setting stone, but I don't find myself locked down to that ever, just because painting is an intuitive process and you kind of have to allow yourself to remain free while remaining grounded.
Whenever I do a painting, actually without this, you ask me, when does a painting feel done? And a painting to me won't feel done until I've constructed it from zero to the ultimate end, I guess you could say. So yeah, without sewing it, I definitely feel like my pieces don't feel finished. The ones that I don't sew, I'm like, I don't feel like that one's sewn all the way.
It takes me about 5 days to get a canvas ready for me to paint on it, just because I'm sewing these puzzle pieces together with scraps of canvas that I had or have. I don't really ever start from one piece of raw canvas. And from there, I'm forming a puzzle that it's intuitively am using. I kind of have the idea of what I'm going to paint in my brain so that the figures and the lines and the stitching can mend to that idea that I have, and then I will make a small sketch, I guess you can say, but very fast, instant memory in that way. My paintings are a bit like a puzzle to myself and to the viewer. As I'm doing it, the puzzle will form and take shape and then allow me to bring in these elements that I've sparked in my brain through meditation. As an artist, I believe there will always be moments of self-doubt, at least for myself, just because being an artist, specifically a painter, it's definitely a form of communication that's either highly respected or a little overlooked or just not quite understood. And not everybody needs to understand you, I'm finding out. So in that way, I'm also reminding myself that I'm not really looking for anybody to understand me, I'm just looking to understand myself. So my spurts of self-doubt, I realize they're just like outside influences that I just need to search deeper and look deeper in myself, and what will prevail will prevail. Especially just because I find myself creating something larger from the chaos that I put on the canvas. If I don't start with a little bit of chaos, then I find myself having trouble connecting shapes or figures or living organisms, like I like to say my paintings have a bit of living organism within it, and atoms and elements and whatnot. So yeah, each chaotic moment is derived from the one previous, I would say. One of the things that influenced me and still does influence me is poetry and storytelling. My Nana, who I grew up with for quite some time, is very into the gospel, and the gospel is this beautiful language that has poetry and storytelling within it, and I guess I would say that is my root of poetry. And from there, I found myself, as I got older, always going back to that storytelling and trying to make sense of things and connecting the dots and whatnot, and allowing myself to form my own sort of language, as the Bible does and as my Nana did to me when I was younger. My painting titled Past, Present, Future, which is a triptych of self-portrait of myself with all of these elements and lines and atoms and you name it, fabric, shapes forming into one being, I would say. I made a poem specifically for that painting, but I didn't know it was for that painting until I finished that painting. And then I went back into my journal and I looked into my artist journal and I was like, wow, this is that painting. All my dots connected subconsciously through natural process of creation. So it's always rewarding to see, for me at least, being that I'm obsessed with piecing things together in time and puzzles and whatnot. It's always rewarding for me to see that one thing led to another and actually worked out. Paths of life, ways of light, existence, things clicking, the way things click, the way they feel when they click. Do you feel them click in that moment, or is it not until moments or years later that you understand, you see, and you've watched the line of light slowly form and come alive? Being in the space that you feel you can control, but you ultimately cannot control anything other than yourself. Controlling others, controlling your surroundings. Your fixated nature of humanity, comparison of one another, of each other, situations, looks, and colors. Perspective. Colors evoke emotion. People evoke emotion out of each other. How does humanity shape each other as a collective? We do metaphysically and physically. I consciously became aware of what I was writing and thinking when I allowed myself to be completely free in my process, I guess. How I said that I had that, I kind of restricted myself to that bubble of beauty and what painting should be. Once I let go of that bubble and I took a step out, my brain, I guess subconsciously, just automatically allowed me to bring these thoughts and ideas that I was writing down into my painting, because I had no expectations other than of my brain. I just let go and things connected, as they should. So I like to think in every painting I'm starting all over again, because in order to paint, you have to learn to paint, but then you also have to unteach yourself to paint. At least in my brain, I think that's how it works, because growing up or learning academically, because I'm a figurative painter, that's where my base is. I learned how to figuratively paint. I studied in Italy for quite some time and learned all the basics of figuratism. And then from there, I found myself kind of conceived in this bubble, because I was almost limited to what I thought that art was in a way, or what beauty was in a way. You go to the Pitti Palace and the Medici and all of that, and you see all this beauty from the Renaissance, and you're like, wow, I have to paint like this. So I definitely think that I started finding myself in that bubble, and then I untaught myself to learn as I go. As an artist and as a person, as a human being, I think that we're all trying to make sense of things, and we were put on this earth to create in one form or another, regardless of if that's the way that you make your coffee in the morning or the way you drive to work. I don't know. Your rituals, everybody has their rituals. My ritual as an artist, I would say, has been writing and trying to make sense of the things that I don't really understand. And then that translated into my paintings subconsciously and naturally, which continues to allow me to evolve. Hope my viewers can see themselves in my work, or their experiences, maybe their own distant memories that they didn't know they had or forgot that they had. Everything's a learning experience, and as I'm literally learning from myself as I'm painting and I'm making these portraits and landscapes and fairy tale-like compositions, I hope that the viewer is getting a sense of self in myself as well. I want them to figure it out with me, because that's not really something that people are open to. Maybe some people are, but a lot of people like to figure themselves out with outside outlets and whatnot. So I think that my paintings are a chance for people to silently look in and look deeper into themselves and make sense of what maybe they don't know isn't making sense in their own brain or their own life.